Welcome to another live stream, my friends. Well, guys, Bitcoin is looking pretty dang good today. So I want to take a look at BTC on several different time frames, as well as take a look at Bitcoin dominance, a handful of altcoins, and all that sort of good stuff, you guys, to see if there's anything really jumping out at us, to see if we can find any opportunities. Specifically, some Stuber fibs forming at the time would be great to see. So we're going to take a dive into several different charts here. So just to start things off on the Bitcoin 4-hour chart, you guys, I mean, those of you guys who were in my stream just a couple of days ago know that I was in a long position because I figured that we may be finding support here. You know, all that, this is just a typical setup. I was even saying up here that if this were a 5-minute setup, I would be eyeing up this zone down here for a long setup, and it didn't have to play out. But if it did, it wouldn't be all too uncommon for that type of setup, because market structure is market structure, whether it's the 4-hour, the daily, weekly, 5-minute, 1-minute. Market structure is market structure. So this is the type of setup I look for on the 5-minute. So instead of trading the 5-minute, seeing it on the 4-hour, I was willing to play more of a swing position on something like that. So absolutely playing out perfectly so far. We basically filled my purple box, the 786, right down to the 886. Hit a couple of my entries. I actually had a few more down in this green box down here. If we would have ended up getting that liquidity grab to the downside before some sort of pump, that would have helped bring my average entry down and tightening up my stop loss if my invalidation was down here. But since we bounced and hit a target of mine already, at this point, my stop loss is break even. I don't want to take a loss on this position because the gains have been juicy already. I do still want to see us get a little bit higher. My second take profit is, I think I have it set around 115,233. I'm going to have to double check that. But yeah, I always front run my fibs a little bit, but basically my target is approximately 115.5, 115.6 thousand, but then I'm front running it by a couple $100 with my next take profit. So from there, we're going to have to see what happens. Truthfully, who knows if we're even going to hit my next target. I may end up taking a little more profits a little bit early, just because there are some things on the lower time frames that I want to go over in a little bit here. But, you know, all in all, I would still like to see us hit that 214 fib. And the reasoning for that, you guys, for those of you who are new to my channels or new to my strategy, basically 214 seems like a pretty random number, but basically that would be the opposite 786. So notice that my 214 just front runs my 786 resistance very slightly, just because of how the size of the swing is and stuff. Sometimes it overlaps perfectly. Sometimes it front runs a little bit, depending on the size of the range. But yeah, basically that is my reasoning for my second target here. Again, very clearly, I always front run my fibs a little bit. Just like with my invalidation, I leave a little bit of wiggle room. Those fibs are basically guidelines, and I like, when I'm taking profits, I don't like to get greedy. I like to lock them in a little bit early. Just like with a stop loss, I like to leave a little extra wiggle room. But so far, that's what I'm looking at. Now, guys, the question is, what's next for Bitcoin? Because I did have some pretty big warnings on my radar recently, and that was the MDX Trendmaster. Some of those, a little bit of that has been lifted for me. We're actually getting mixed signals right now. You guys familiar with my streams and my strategies know that I like to use the MDX Trendmaster for pointing out the direction of the trend that the signals are going. So right now we actually have mixed signals, right? We did print that lower sell signal, which I had mentioned to watch for those of you with the indicators, and as well just on my streams watching for that. You know, that was a big red flag to me. We did get a big push to the downside. It actually printed a little bit late. Notice that a big chunk of the move already played out. So it printed when the price was down here. That's just luck of the draw. I probably would have shorted it had it called it a little bit earlier. Ethereum actually had one. The lower sell signal did print right above that little consolidation, so you could have had a much tighter stop, but I never did catch that, nor was I all too interested in shorting, but I would have considered a hedge on something like that. However, now you guys, like I said, we have mixed signals because we now printed a higher buy signal again. So right now with this indicator, it's flip-flopping a little bit. You know, basically I'm taking it as this. This does not necessarily mean the new higher buy is going to send us to new all-time highs, but it's at least a sign of strength, or at the very least a sign of weakness from the bears, because they weren't able to push us to new lows with that lower sell signal. We ended up setting a little bit of a higher low in my Stuber fib. So the market structure is still holding strong there. So love to see that. I would love to see the bulls step back in with this new buy signal and push us to new highs, but we're going to have to see what happens. Looking for a longer time frame, right? Because as I mentioned, we're getting close to my second target. At that point, that would mean about half of my position is closed. Right now, I only closed a quarter at my first target, as I usually do. And my second quarter will be front running my 214 fib target. From there, I like to see what happens with the remaining half of my position. So I'm not banking on a home run trade, all or nothing to new highs, boom or bust kind of a thing. But you know what? If we do get that nice running position, I always trade the range first. And then if the trend continues, I at least have a little bit of my position still remaining in case that home run trade does happen. That's why I don't like to, I ladder into my trades and I ladder out of my trades. It's just a lot less stressful than, taking profits too early and then panicking to get back into a new position and all that sort of stuff. So that's kind of my plan there. If we end up breaking past my second target there, what would be next? I would actually, so in this case, since we already broke the micro downtrend here that we had, right? And I'm just talking since we set our all-time high, basically, this little downtrend we had here. So this was our low, that's our lower low, that was our confirmed lower high. So as I said, with that structure break, waiting for that Stuber fib pullback. But since we broke that lower time frame range, then I'm going to start looking for, well, where's resistance on the bigger range? And that's where I would pull from where that downtrend began at our all-time highs, pull down to where our current local bottom is. And our fibs look something like that. So basically my resistance is starting around 120,000 if we're able to break above our current range. That's just kind of the macro resistance I would be looking at. Now, this is going to be a large range of resistance, and I'm sorry, that's just the way it is, that on the 4-hour, and when we have such a large range like this, basically my macro resistance, I mean, the 786 actually starts around 120.8, 120.9 thousand, but I'm just calling it approximately 120,000 because, again, front running a little bit plus that even number. I do think we would go a little bit higher if we get to this range. But again, just basically 120 to 127 is fair game for resistance for me. My reasoning for that is the 786, 886 Stuber fib pocket, this purple box here, basically runs from 120.8 up to 122.6 thousand US dollars. And then from there, there's also the double top swing fail liquidity grab zone that I always use for my Stuber fib setups as invalidation. I usually go to the 115 with a little wiggle room past that. And that is currently, it's actually closer to 127.2 thousand. But basically, yeah, anywhere from my purple resistance box up into my green resistance box. I should probably change that to red just to make it a little bit more reasonable for a resistance color for the average person, so that it's the opposite of my support zone that we had. So yeah, Bitcoin by all means, or by no means rather, is guaranteed new all-time highs. That's one thing. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but there's a chance, and I'm not saying I'm bearish right now, okay? Don't get that idea that I think it's time to just absolutely hammer in all in shorts and stuff like that. I see a lot of people making that mistake just because of things people have said on Twitter and that kind of thing. I'm just saying that if we end up getting up towards 120,000, start to be a little bit cautious, because generally speaking, these boxes act as perfect bull traps. Both of these boxes, perfect bull traps. Because generally speaking, and you guys can go across social media and watch comments and that sort of thing, maximum FOMO starts at resistance. Everybody was bearish at support. Nobody wanted to take that long. And I had mentioned that support always looks weak until it actually finds support, just like resistance always looks like the price is strong until all of a sudden you see that rejection, right? So just looking from a risk reward point of view, we all know we're supposed to buy support and sell resistance, therefore long support, short resistance. But when it comes time to actually pulling the trigger on that, most people have a hard time breaking through their emotions for that. So these zones, they act as those bull traps and bear traps so often. So often we see it, especially with the first retest. And that's the thing. Now, if we come back down to these levels, I'll be a lot less bullish than I was this time. Not saying I would be bearish and shorting into support. However, I would have less faith if I did end up taking another long, it would be a lighter one, because it's always the first retest that I really like to get in there, because so often those levels get tested. And that's exactly why I'm going to be looking for reasons to short when we start getting into these resistance levels up here. And again, that is not even me being bearish. That's not me saying that the top is definitely in or anything like that. But just looking at resistance for what it is, I would at least be watching the shorter time frames and looking for some sort of a structure break on, let's say, a 5-minute as we're trading up at 4-hour resistance. But we're going to have to see what happens, obviously. Like I said, some indicators starting to show some mixed signals a little bit. The MDX ALGO master, I had also pointed this out ahead of time, you guys, that basically the MDX ALGO master, it does have a setting for auto fib levels, and Stuber fibs are in there. So it'll automatically pull when it figures that it has that type of fib setup. Now, it's very important to understand how these setups work, because sometimes the indicator doesn't necessarily pull it the exact way that I would, or maybe it's already invalidated. It pulls it late. There's some things that it can do wrong, but generally speaking, if it agrees with how I have my fib pulled, then that's just added confluence, right? That's suggesting that AI agrees with my fib pull. And that was another reason why I was bullish down here, because my indicator was showing the exact same fib pull that I had mentioned, or that I had lined up. And let me actually just get rid of the bearish fib, because we have my resistance pockets there now. So let's just pull that bullish one back, because that is the one that we're currently in. And again, like I said, the indicator has it pulled the exact same that I would. Pulled from our current low, our local low, at about 107,150 US dollars, pulled to the top, going bottom to top, because we're looking for support rather than resistance. And that top is approximately 117.8 thousand. So quite a big range, nice big juicy one, but yeah, absolutely beautiful that it played out so perfectly like that. Just another typical Stuber fib there. Another thing that I was mentioning about this chart, you guys, was the liquidations, and how we were starting to show a lot of high leverage liquidation levels above us. And that's one reason why I thought that it makes sense from a market maker perspective. If I was a market maker, I'd want to grab some of that liquidity. There's a big pool of it above us. Whereas to the downside, there was only a little bit left. And that's one of the reasons why I had more laddered orders down at my green box here, because there was a little bit of liquidity there. So if the market maker was going to go grab it, I wanted to grab or just to ladder into my entry, get a bigger position. Also just bring my average entry down and all that sort of stuff. So still have a lot of liquidations, the 50 to 100x above us. So I still think we could go a little bit higher here. Obviously doesn't have to happen, and that's why I lock in profits on the way. That's why we hit my first target. I took some profits. But I would still like to be hanging on to my position in case we go a little bit higher. Bitcoin on the shorter time frame. So this is what I mentioned, that, we may be seeing resistance coming into play a little bit early on the shorter time frames. And if you'll actually notice something here with me, notice we had another Stuber fib setup here. So whether you wanted to say, okay, this was our high, higher low, and I know this is micro analyzing, but really just looking at structure for what it is, we lost that higher low. And if you don't like that one, and you want to look at something a little more significant, let's just say here, here, and here. Either way, we lost this level as well. And then notice that we pull back up. So a lot of people would tend to short into support, right? As you lose that level, people love FOMOing into breakout positions. And then when it starts climbing again, then they'll back out of their position, even if they were correct. Whereas I like to get that structure break and then see those pullbacks. And that's why I love using the Fibonacci tool so much, is because it really helps you keep a level head, because there's a lot less emotion involved. It's very structured fib pulls, yeah, basically I have entry level here, entry level here, entry level here, and take profits here, invalidations here, so yeah, basically that's why I love pulling fibs, just because they're so systematic. Because when it comes to trading, you need a strategy that you can just continue to trade time and time again. And everyone has their own strategies, obviously. For those of you who are interested in how I pull Fibonacci's, how I look at market structure, how I've been looking at some of my trade setups, you guys, that Bitcoin setup I was just talking about there, as well as so many altcoins that I was trading all of September, absolutely crushing it with almost a 75% success rate. The account there exploding, absolutely beautiful to see. If you want to see more examples of how I pull these fibs, some of my trade setup ideas and theories, how I look at structure, just more of my thoughts on the market in general, do yourselves a favor, scan the QR code on the screen. There should be a link in the description down below as well. But yeah, with that, Bitcoin, like I said, on the shorter time frames, this would have been a perfect super fib setup, right? Yeah, it's a lot smaller, but playing the range first. As I said, I always play the range first and leave some running in case it's a home run trade. But here's a perfect example. I never shorted this. I'm not interested in shorting right now, but it's a perfect example that, hey, we broke this structure. We came back. We would have hit 3 laddered entries, right? Because as I said, I love laddering into entries. I love laddering out of positions. So I generally ladder in something like so. And then we have hit the first target already, the 0.5 fib. Second target would be my 214 fib. And after that, I would be seeing if, since the smaller range has played out, then we would see if the bigger range would play out. So that's basically where I would be looking to see if we can end up targeting support of this bigger range here, which would basically start down just right around 110,000 US dollars. So that could end up retracing the move that we just had, that pump to the upside. But again, we'll have to see what happens. For those who are bearish, yeah, that would have been a nice setup. I myself am not, and I'm more so willing to take profits off my long position, if anything. But at this point, still not even ready to do that. I'm still waiting to see if I end up hitting my bigger targets. Let me just clean this up a little bit, get rid of my smaller fib pulls. There we go. Let's check out the 5 minute. So same thing, right? We have the same structure on the 5 minute, obviously. However, whichever one of these levels you want to look at, but even if we were looking at something like this, we obviously ended up dropping that. And that's the same fib pull that I was just talking about, right? Just kind of seeing more candles, but zooming into the 5 minute, right? Same thing. Yeah. So guys, I also want to take a look at Bitcoin dominance. Bitcoin dominance is climbing a little bit. Normally I would say that's a little bit bearish, but it's nice to see that it's not so much the market is in full-blown panic and panicking out of high-risk assets. It's not like people are going into Bitcoin and then leaving the market. It's actually, Bitcoin has been climbing today with Bitcoin dominance climbing. So it just kind of looks to me like focus is back on the king right now, whether it's just for the day, whether it's for a week, a month, we're going to have to see. But I would like to see this eventually end up dumping off a cliff again, because that would be so good for the altcoins. I want to bring up the Trendmaster because This is one of those times we obviously have higher trending buy signals and higher trending sell signals. So it's possible the Bitcoin dominance is just in a big uptrend and we are going to continue to the upside. However, the fact that we got to my basically a 5-year resistance level, right? This is a weekly chart. This is pulled back to the end of 2020, start of 2021. So basically a 5-year swing here. And we got right up to that 786 and getting rejected. So I would love to see Bitcoin dominance still end up hitting some of these targets, because so far, just looking at it from a Stuber perspective, we never even quite hit my first target yet. And if that's the case, even if this bounces a little bit and we end up, trading sideways or whatever and working our way down, I mean, that could be a lot of time for altcoins to go for a big move now. So we're going to have to see, obviously, if this just moons right to the upside and breaks out, for example. I don't know how likely that is, but if it does, obviously altcoins could be in trouble. And the whole market in general, maybe, if Bitcoin price is dropping while Bitcoin dominance is climbing like that, that could be a bad sign for the market. But so far, we're still in a downtrend, right? Even if this bounces, I mean, it's not like it's in a beautiful uptrend by any means. It is starting to break the downtrend, right? Because we have a lower high, and we have technically got above that. So it may climb a little more. But overall, I would say that it's going to set some sort of a lower high and let the altcoins run again. The bounce that it's getting right now, honestly, not all that surprising. If I bring up the trend master, even with the Bitcoin dominance here, one of the strategies I use for this, or with this, is basically looking for the low pivot point. Like, for example, if I'm playing the higher trending buy signals, then I will often pull a fib from the reversal of the previous post, or previous signal rather. So this higher buy signal, this would have been that low, that pivotal point. And if I pull something like this to the highs there, notice that we are actually very close to the 786 there. So in my opinion, this Bitcoin dominance bounce here is just some sort of a reaction to an obvious support level, in my opinion. So I'm hoping that we just kind of see this climb up to the 0.5 fib and see a rejection and set new lows. That would be fantastic for the altcoin market. But yeah, it's worth mentioning that, at least for now, it did technically break the micro downtrend. So something to be cautious of there, that altcoins may see a little bit of a struggle if the altcoin dominance just keeps climbing, or Bitcoin dominance keeps climbing there. So something to keep an eye on there. Hype, it has, from the recent Stuber fib, it hit its first target, actually several times, right? We hit it here, we hit it here. Because we had these two tests of this fib pocket basically. So still looking pretty good, still setting higher highs. Basically at this point, I wouldn't want to see hype lose below our pivot here, which is around, just a little below $43. I would give that a little wiggle room. So basically, I don't want to see hype drop below $42. If it does, then it's kind of losing this little trend here. And at that point, I would probably go to pull a new fib. Let me just erase all this just to clean things up. But if we end up losing basically this higher low on the trend, I would be looking at pulling a fib from where the move started, right? If the smaller channel ends up breaking, then I would be looking for the bigger channel to step in basically. And with that one, basically valid unless we end up dropping below 38.48 approximately. So quite a big range, but so far still looking not so bad there. Let's see if the trend master says any. Oh boy, if I'm zoomed out on the 5 minute, there's a lot of them. So one thing that I do notice right away using the trend master is there is a higher sell signal. So at this point, I would actually consider pulling a fib something like this for a shorter, more of a scalp setup. Basically, looking at a scalp setup, something like this, I would be looking at support from $44.16 down to $43.05 approximately. Just looking at something like that. Yeah, or if the bulls step in a little bit early, then we could expect some sort of a higher buy signal on the MDX Trendmaster. In that case, I would basically start laddering into a long and having whatever the lowest pivot point is right before that next buy signal. That's kind of what I would be using as my next invalidation. So we'll see if we get something like that. That's something that, guys, I will, if I end up noticing it, if I've got my eye on it a little later. Here, actually, I'm going to set an alert. Let's go 25. I'll set an alert there on hype. So if that goes, then I can check out what it's looking like. And that way I can dive into my Telegram channel and keep those view in there up to date with what my plan is there. I will try to keep an eye on that, especially if we get some sort of a higher buy signal on this. I will try to have my eye on that and keep you guys in the loop in my Telegram channel with that. Solana, yeah, on the 4 hour got that nice bounce off the 786. Absolutely beautiful to see that. I laid this one out well in advance on this channel, and same thing, right? The fact that we had higher sell signals and higher buy signals. So I pulled this fib from the basically the pivot point before this buy signal, and notice we found support right in that 786, hit the first target, the 0.5 fib. So far that is looking good. Obviously have potential resistance right now, because even though this is a higher sell signal, it still is giving us a little bit of grief. We are seeing a little bit of resistance. So if you ended up in that Solana long, hopefully you took some profits at your take profit just in case. Ethereum, it's looking okay, but honestly for me, it's just kind of in the middle of nowhere. I had a fib pull more so something like this. Let me just clean a couple things up because those aren't valid anymore. So a couple things. One, maybe there's actually a lot of strength here and the bulls actually stepped in before the 786. Another potential scenario is that we just haven't finished that move yet and we're still going to come down to these support levels. Both definitely possible. Trendmaster, we still have a buy signal, but we're struggling to stay above it. So if it is nice that we broke this sell signal, right? We never held this resistance. We actually got above it. So not looking too bad at this point. It's just that if we were to lose this type of a range support, you know, if Bitcoin or if Ethereum ends up dropping 3,100, at that point, I would be basically pulling a fib from where this swing started. And support at that point doesn't really start till around 2,200. So I'm hoping that the range we're currently trading in will actually hold the price of Ethereum up. Hoping to see that. The 1 hour chart, do we have anything that we can find? Let's wait for the Trendmaster to load here. We do have a buy signal, obviously a significant lower buy signal. I would consider with Ethereum right now, I would consider looking into a fib, something like this. Pulled from 38.20 up to about 42.45. So the support for that would start at about 39.12 US dollars. So yeah, basically, let me just change the colors a little bit here. So looking at this downtrend, here we had a low. We did set a lower low here. So I confirm this as our lower high, lower low, lower high, lower low, lower high. And we have broke that, whether you want to say this little green candle here, because that technically that's on the microstructure, that's my lower high on the 1 hour. But even if you wanted to use this level, we did end up breaking that either way. So at this point, it still looks bullish as long as we hold our lows here around 38.20. This uptrend, though, it has been broken, right? So that's one of those times where I would consider, if this was a 5-minute chart, I would be eyeing up this level down here. So I think it's very possible that Ethereum sees a little bit of a pullback, because just to show you what I mean is, here we had our high, higher low, higher high, higher low, and we broke that level, right? So we actually broke the micro uptrend on the 1 hour. I don't know if this would have got it. No, it would have front run the 786 very slightly there, unfortunately, for those looking for a bearish setup. But yeah, I'm not interested in shorting this. Once again, I keep saying it, not really interested in shorting right now. But that being said, I wouldn't just be FOMOing into a long right now on this unless I saw something on a shorter time frame, more of a scalp setup or whatever. But at this point, it really looks to me like Ethereum could see a bigger pullback. The S&P 500, you guys, still looking good. I mean, technically it is getting up to double top territory, and it does have a bit of an ugly bearish divergence here on the RSI. Going from overextended conditions down to, well, currently sitting at about 67. I would actually feel a lot worse about this if this was right at the 70 level, just because that's a very specific divergence I look for on the RSI. It's not exactly perfect right now, so I'm not too worried about it yet. But yeah, I mean, we can see that even a Stuber fib setup happened here. It's just the fact that it has technically already played out, right? Because we came down, filled my purple box absolutely perfectly. First target, second target. So I would love to see the stock market continue to climb. Just understand that as far as a more of a shorter time frame scenario there, it has reached its target. But that being said, there hasn't been a bearish structure break, right? As long as we were holding this low here, I have not too many concerns there. So I know crypto and the stock market hasn't really been moving hand in hand recently. It does not have to, but I would just like to see the stock market continuing to climb, because it just shows that there's not a bunch of fear in the market, right? At least it would show some sort of confidence in the markets in general. Using these Stuber fib strategies, you guys, even traded some options using them. Bought a call option on Mara. This was actually a couple weeks ago when we first got into my purple fib box here. But yeah, just very cool to see that this is same strategy basically, works across crypto, stocks, Forex. It's just basic market structure. It's just a good way of looking for that market structure break and then waiting for a pullback, rather than looking to FOMO into a breakout and getting wrecked, right? Sorry, guys, I haven't been following with the chat at all. For those of you who are here with me, please do me a favor, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't. Dan Rab, good to see you here, my friend. Good to see you here in most of my streams. Love it. I must be doing something right if you keep coming back. But yeah, market's not looking too bad, guys. As I mentioned about with Troll the other day, it broke out of this really nice wedge, but I wouldn't be too surprised to see it test this old resistance into new support. And you know what would line up absolutely perfectly with something like that, guys, would be retesting that, holding that resist support flip right down into a Stuber fib pocket. That would be a beautiful combination, and I would not at all be surprised to see that happen for Troll in the near future. We're going to have to see, but if it does, I plan on buying that level. I like buying the dip on this guy, and that is one that I would buy if we got that confluence with a wedge retest right at a Stuber level like that. Would absolutely love to see it. Cat with mask, you guys, this one, I mean, this is even higher risk. This one only has like a $4.6 million market cap at this point, I think. Obviously looks weak right now. However, Troll also looked this way for a few months. I think it was a couple months at least, before it ended up going absolutely to the moon. The same type of setup, right? Basically the first big Stuber fib on the 4 hour, kind of the same thing that I'm looking at here. It absolutely does not need to play out the same. I want to be clear about that. Meme coins, and especially low cap meme coins, are very dangerous, very volatile. But as far as the Solana casino goes, and me just looking to throw in some small positions at some boom or bust plays, I at least like that we're at a very big support level there. So I'm hoping to see some signs of life out of this guy eventually. Aster, we are cool. Interesting. Let me check something. We may actually have a setup here. That's not. It's not a very clean Stuber, but it sure tested the 786 perfectly there. Sorry, let me just check something. I just want to check if I'm in any positions at this point on this guy. And if not, should I be? I am not currently in an Aster position. This must be an old one that I had open. I wish I should have looked at this earlier. At this point, I mean, not that it's moved a ton, but I would have rather got in here. I might start a very small position and just ladder in the majority of my orders down here if we end up dropping. I did already lose one position on Aster today, full disclosure. So I'm hesitant to take an entry that isn't absolutely perfect. I'm trying to remember where the one was where I did take a loss. I think it was something like that. No, that wouldn't have been the one. I can't remember. Either way, yeah, I am tempted to ladder into something here. It would have to be very low leverage because that's a big range. Oh, sorry, I had a smaller one pulled. Yeah, something like that. Yeah, we're so close to the first target already. But that was a nice 786 touch. That's a risky one. Bitcoin's still looking okay. What do we got going on here? I feel like any pullback with Bitcoin right now, I just feel like it's going to be short-lived. I really have a feeling that we're still going to go up a little bit higher towards that 115.5 thousand, just because that would be my next target for that Stuber fib setup from down here. Still holding that beautiful position. Again, guys, if you want more examples of how I pull fibs, how I look at market structure, some of my trade setup ideas, how I look at market structure in general, you just want more of my thoughts on the market in general, do yourselves a favor, scan the QR code on the screen, get into my free Telegram channel. And yeah, hope to see you in there. And guys, with that, I think that's about all I wanted to go over today. So again, please, if you guys did appreciate this live stream, you appreciate me showing you some of my favorite personal strategies, keeping a level head in the market when a lot of people out there are struggling right now and just struggling to keep their emotions at bay. I like to be the voice of reason and keep just a calm, collected head while looking at this and just looking at the charts for what they are. So if you do appreciate that, please do me a favor, hit that thumbs up. It'll go a long way with the new YouTube channel. Because like I said, guys, I mean, this is a brand new channel. The likes and the subscribes go a long way, help the algorithm. And yeah, like I said, I will be streaming here full time now, starting tomorrow. No more intro streams at the Financial Summit. We'll be hopping right into it over here. So very cool, you guys. Excited to be on the new channel here. And yeah. With that, any questions, Dan Rab? I did just take that little look at Aster. You know what? Actually, I do want to take a further look on this guy. Yeah, what do we got here? There's not a ton of price history here, so it's a little bit tricky. But yeah, like I said, I mean, we tested right off a bigger 786 here, testing a smaller 786 here. I'm hoping to see this thing find some support relatively soon here. It's a little risky just because of how volatile it is and where it's sitting right now, but this is one that I am still very interested in playing, especially on the shorter time frames. I would love to see us start printing higher buy signals rather than lower buy signals and lower sell signals. That would be a great sign for the trend because, yeah, like I said, right now we're kind of trading right at resistance. So although I would love to be in this had I been able to get in the 786, just because, at this point I can take profits and update stops and that sort of stuff, but I never. So it is what it is. But yeah, I would love to see on the 5 minutes start seeing these MDX trend master buy signals start trending to the upside again, because that has been a money printer on this coin in the past. Not every time, but there has been some very nice running positions based on that. So I'm hoping to see it again. And if I do notice that, I will be sharing that in the Telegram channel with my followers there. So again, do yourselves a favor and get in there. With that, my friends, I think that's about all I wanted to go over today. So one more time, please do me a favor, hit that like button. Make sure you're subscribed to the new channel if you aren't already. You don't want to miss these live streams. And as I mentioned, if you want access to the private Telegram where I share some of my trade strategies, some of my trade setups, just my overall thoughts on the market, examples of fib pulls and market structure and all that sort of good stuff, scan the QR code on the screen. With that, I'm out. Stay safe, my friends.